A millionaire stranded in a storm, a single mom who stops to help, and a mysterious gold ring that makes him think she's married. But when the truth behind that ring is revealed, everything changes. Stay tuned for a story of unexpected kindness and quiet strength you won't forget. Rain poured over the quiet highway as Lena tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her 7-year-old son, Mason, sat in the back seat, humming softly to keep himself calm. They were heading home from visiting Lena's sister when she noticed a sleek black luxury car stopped on the roadside, hazard lights blinking in the downpour. Despite being tired, Lena's heart tugged at her. She slowed down, squinting through the rain-streaked windshield. The storm had turned the road into a silver river, and visibility was barely a few feet. Most drivers were speeding past, eager to escape the weather, but the sight of that lone car with its lights flashing gnawed at her conscience. She thought of the many nights she had been stranded in her old car before she learned how to fix basic problems herself. She eased her car to the shoulder and rolled down her window, the cold rain blowing in with a hiss. Mason stopped humming and leaned forward, his small face filled with curiosity. "Mom, why are we stopping?" he asked, his voice a mix of worry and wonder. "There's someone who might need help," Lena replied, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. She could feel the chill of the rain, even inside the car. A tall man in a perfectly tailored suit stood beside the black luxury vehicle, drenched but trying to stay composed. Water streamed from his dark hair and pooled at his polished shoes, now splattered with mud. He looked out of place on this lonely stretch of road, like someone pulled from a city boardroom and dropped into the middle of a storm. His name was Ethan Mercer, though Lena didn't know that yet. To her, he was simply a stranger in trouble. "Need help?" she called out, raising her voice to cut through the sound of pounding rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Her words carried a steadiness that surprised even her. Ethan turned toward her voice, his eyes wide with a mix of surprise and relief. "Yes, my car just died," he answered, stepping closer so she could hear him. "No signal to call for help either. My phone's useless out here." His voice had a refined edge, the kind that came from board meetings and negotiations, but right now it held a note of helplessness. Without hesitation, Lena grabbed an umbrella from the passenger seat and pushed open her door. The wind fought against her, sending a spray of rain onto her clothes, but she didn't flinch. "Pop the hood," she said firmly, her voice calm and confident, surprising Ethan even more. Most people would have kept driving, especially in a storm like this. Yet here she was, a lone woman with a child, stepping out to help a stranger in the dark. Mason pressed his face to the window, his breath fogging the glass, watching his mother stride through the sheets of rain. The storm roared around them, but Lena moved with purpose, as if she had done this 100 times before. Ethan hesitated for just a second, staring at the unexpected rescuer, then quickly pulled the release inside his car. Under the flickering streetlight, Lena examined the engine while Ethan watched in disbelief. Steam rose in pale wisps, curling into the damp night air. The rain had slowed to a mist, but water still dripped steadily from the edges of the hood, spattering onto the metal below. Lena's eyes scanned the tangle of wires and hoses with the ease of someone who had spent long nights under her own car's hood. She asked quick, practical questions, her voice crisp but calm. "When did it stall? Any warning lights? Any strange noises before it quit?" Ethan, usually in control of every situation, found himself fumbling. He was used to boardrooms, contracts, and high-stakes deals, not sputtering engines. I think the engine overheated," he admitted, brushing rain from his forehead with a sheepish gesture. "One moment everything was fine, and then it just died. I barely made it to the shoulder." Lena gave a knowing nod. "Sounds like a loose connection, or maybe the coolant line," she said. Without hesitation, she turned back to her own car and popped the trunk. Inside was a neatly organized toolkit, wrenches, screwdrivers, jumper cables, all carefully arranged. Ethan blinked in surprise. "You carry all that around?" he asked, half curious, half impressed. "Single mom," she replied simply, selecting a wrench. "When something breaks, you learn to fix it yourself. Saves time, saves money." Rain dripped from her hair as she leaned over the engine, the streetlight casting a halo around her determined face. Ethan shifted awkwardly, offering his phone light to help. "Here, let me." "Hold it steady," Lena instructed, and he obeyed without question. He watched as she tightened the connection with practiced precision, her movements sure and efficient. Every twist of the wrench echoed with quiet authority. Within minutes, Lena wiped her hands on a cloth and gestured toward the driver's seat. "Try it now." Ethan slid into the leather seat, half expecting nothing to change. But the moment he turned the key, the engine roared back to life, smooth and strong. His eyes widened, a grin breaking across his face. "You're incredible," he said, climbing back out. "I can't thank you enough. I was starting to think I'd spend the whole night out here." Lena smiled politely, her breath forming soft clouds in the cool air. "Just happy to help. People should look out for each other, especially on nights like this." From their car, Mason peeked through the fogged window, his small hand pressed against the glass. He waved shyly, eyes bright with admiration for his mom. Ethan chuckled, raising his own hand in a friendly wave. The boy's grin widened, a tiny spark of warmth against the cold, wet night, and for a brief moment the storm seemed a little less harsh. As Lena handed back the wrench, Ethan noticed a delicate gold ring on her left hand. A drop of rain slid across the thin band, catching the faint glow of the streetlight until it seemed to shimmer like a tiny flame. It gleamed even in the dim light, drawing his attention more than he intended. "That's a beautiful ring," he said casually, trying to sound polite, though a note of curiosity crept into his voice. "Your husband must be lucky." Lena's fingers tightened ever so slightly around the wrench before she released it. For a brief moment, something unreadable flickered across her face, an expression somewhere between wistfulness and guarded sadness. She lowered her eyes, the ring reflecting a soft, golden hue against her rain-damp skin. Then she answered softly, "I'm not married." Ethan blinked, genuinely surprised. The ring had looked unmistakably like a wedding band. "But the ring," he asked, his brows knitting together. "It belonged to my late mother," Lena explained, glancing down at it as if the memory were both heavy and comforting. "She wore it every day. After she passed, I kept it. It reminds me to stay strong, for me and Mason. People often assume it's a wedding ring." Her voice carried a quiet steadiness, but Ethan could hear the subtle ache beneath the words. The wind rustled through the wet trees nearby, filling the silence that followed. He studied her profile, the way she held herself with quiet dignity. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his tone softer than before. "Losing someone like that, it can't be easy." Lena gave a small nod. "It isn't. Some days it still feels like yesterday. But she taught me to keep going, to take care of the people I love. That's what matters now." She glanced toward her car, where Mason was watching, his little face pressed to the glass. "My son keeps me moving forward." Ethan followed her gaze. Mason's curious eyes met his for a second before the boy shyly ducked back. Ethan felt an unexpected tug in his chest. Here was a woman who had endured loss, who carried her mother's strength like a hidden armor, and yet had stopped on a lonely road to help a stranger in the rain. Her honesty and quiet resilience struck him more than he expected. In his world of polished deals and shallow encounters, kindness like hers felt rare. He found himself wondering how many storms, both real and unseen, she had weathered alone, and how many more she would face with that same unwavering grace. When Ethan offered to pay for her kindness, Lena shook her head before he could even reach for his wallet. "You don't owe me anything. Just drive safely," she said, her tone firm but kind. But Ethan couldn't let it go. The thought of simply driving away after she had stepped out in a storm to help him felt wrong. "At least let me buy you both dinner." "It's the least I can do," he insisted, his voice warm but persistent. Lena hesitated. She hated the feeling of accepting what might look like charity. Her pride, honed through years of standing on her own 2 feet, told her to refuse again. But then a small voice piped up from the back seat. "Mom, I'm hungry," Mason whispered, his big eyes hopeful. Lena sighed, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "All right, she said finally, looking back at Ethan. But only because it's dinner time, not because we expect anything. They ended up at a small roadside diner a few miles down the highway. The neon sign buzzed faintly as they stepped inside, shedding the damp chill of the rain. The place smelled of fresh coffee and grilled burgers, and the warm air wrapped around them like a blanket. Mason's face lit up at the sight of the pie display near the counter. They slid into a booth, and a friendly waitress brought hot chocolate for Mason and steaming mugs of coffee for the adults. As they warmed their hands around the cups, the conversation began to flow. Ethan finally revealed who he was. Ethan Mercer, a millionaire entrepreneur whose name often appeared in business magazines and financial news. Lena raised an eyebrow, but remained polite, clearly unimpressed by the wealth or the titles. "That explains the car," she said with a small grin, and Ethan chuckled, a little surprised by her nonchalance. Instead, Lena talked about her life, raising Mason alone after his father left, juggling 2 jobs, and still finding time to volunteer at the local community center. Her words were simple, but the quiet determination behind them carried more weight than any business success story. Ethan listened intently, genuinely intrigued. "You fixed my car like it was nothing," he said, shaking his head in admiration. "You've done more tonight than some of my employees do in a week." Lena laughed, the sound warm and light in the cozy diner. "Life teaches you to be resourceful when you don't have a safety net," she replied. Her eyes softened as she looked at Mason, who was happily sipping his cocoa. "You learn fast when someone else is counting on you." Ethan found himself nodding, unexpectedly moved. The woman across from him wasn't just strong. She was remarkable, and no amount of money could compare to the resilience she carried so naturally. When it was time to leave, Ethan reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a crisp white business card embossed with silver lettering. He held it out to Lena with a quiet sincerity that caught her off guard. "If you ever need anything at all, call me." "You have no idea how much tonight meant to me," he said, his voice low but steady. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, and the neon glow of the diner's sign reflected off the damp pavement around them. Lena accepted the card, studying the simple elegance of his name and number for a moment before slipping it carefully into her purse. "I'm not looking for favors, Mr. Mercer," she replied, meeting his gaze with calm honesty. "I just hope you'll help someone else someday, the way I helped you." Her words carried no judgment, only a quiet challenge, as if she was passing a torch of kindness. Ethan nodded, humbled. For a man used to closing multi-million-dollar deals, it was rare to feel speechless, but tonight he did. "I will," he promised. "You have my word." The air between them grew still for a heartbeat, the kind of silence that felt meaningful rather than awkward. Mason shifted beside his mother, clutching the small paper bag that held a slice of chocolate pie the waitress had given him. His sleepy eyes flicked from Ethan to his mom, sensing that something important had just passed between the 2 adults, even if he couldn't name it. As Lena guided Mason toward their modest car, Ethan stayed behind. The door shut with a gentle thud, and the headlights flickered on, cutting a soft path through the misty darkness. He stood in the parking lot, hands in his pockets, watching their taillights fade into the night until they were nothing more than a faint red glow on the horizon. He couldn't stop thinking about the single mom with a mother's ring, the woman who had braved a storm, fixed his car, and refused to be swayed by money or status. In a world full of transactions and bottom lines, she had reminded him that kindness and strength were worth far more than any fortune he could ever accumulate. And Lena? She smiled to herself as the last drops of rain eased from the sky, the wipers swishing softly as she drove. Her mother's ring glimmered faintly on her finger, catching the glow of passing streetlights. She didn't need wealth or recognition. The quiet satisfaction of helping someone in need and the love of her little boy was all the treasure she required. The ring wasn't just jewelry. It was a silent promise from the past, a reminder that love and courage run deeper than any riches the world could offer. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.